You're locked into the summer series with your man Louie T here on the Louie T Network. As the temperatures get hot outside, so does the content here on the Louie T Network. So stay cool. Your man Louie T is talking to some of the best in the business, talking National Football League. Enjoy the summer series. All right. So I'm back with another installment of the summer series and have a guest here who needs no introduction. He's been here before, and it's a guy that just continues to set mile markers and milestones. Commanders beat reporter, also host of the John Keim Report over on Empire Meter. If you haven't already done so, do yourself a favor, sub that up. Absolutely a must for any real Commanders fan. I'm with the legend, the GOAT, the OG, John Keim. How you doing today, man?
I'm all right, Louie. I appreciate the introduction. Thanks a lot, man.
No doubt. But before we get started today, Keim, I got a cold one for you, man. I got a cold one for you. Hey, we got a toast to Keim. It's a lot has changed since the last time we've spoken, Keim.
Yeah.
And first of all, everybody cups up out there. Keim, first of all, congratulations on hitting the 1,000 podcast episode milestone. It's a big deal. I just hit 500.
Wow.
So
congrats.
I know how hard it is to hit 1,000. So first and foremost, congratulations on that.
Thanks.
Also, man, congratulations on 30 years of service to this fan base, man. It has been a wild ride, and we can't thank you enough for all that you've done for us. Hitting 500 episodes, 500 games that you've covered was excellent to see the team show you that kind of love and support, man. We can't thank you enough for all that you've done for us, man. Cheers to you, John, and here's to another 500 games that you cover for this franchise. Hopefully you'll get there a lot faster because hopefully we'll be playing some playoff games this time around, John. Cheers.
You're a good man, and I appreciate that. And another 500 better include a lot of playoff games. Otherwise, I don't know that I get there.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I said we're going to get there a lot faster for you, John, this time around.
And it's funny because I have some colleagues like Mike Reese up in New England. He covered more Super Bowls than I covered playoff games, and we've covered the beats around the same time. And it's crazy, but things look good from here on out.
Time for you to make up for lost time, Keim. There you go. Time for you to make up for lost time. I got a couple of Keim lines. Have you heard these before? If it didn't come from Keim, it didn't happen. Have you heard that one before?
I don't know.
This is my favorite one right here. If it ain't from Keim, it ain't worth my time.
Well, I appreciate that.
You are the man, and as you go, we follow, man. We really appreciate all that you've done for this fan base because we've been through a lot. We've been through a lot. And
listen,
look, last year, Keim, you deserved last year just as much as we did. I mean, was last year not your favorite year to cover this team? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, by far. And let me say this, I appreciate how much people have stuck by, continue to follow what I write, what I say, because I know what it's been like. I grew up in Cleveland and I covered this team. I know misery.
Yes.
So, I understand that. So I know how hard it is to stay connected to this. So I appreciate everybody that has. And I will say this, I was extremely happy for the fan base and especially those like yourself and people who you're doing this. Our podcast started at a time where probably the worst 5 years of the franchise. And that's a lot of them are starting like that. And it's hard, but there's still a passion that exists there. And for the people that were there, I felt really good for this fan base for sure, because well-deserved, so much, it's one thing to lose, but to lose and have all that else that happened was painful. And it feels like you're losing, for some people, it feels like you're losing a family member because of how important the franchise was to you. And to start to get that back was tremendous. And to see, like, going to the games, Louie, and just seeing the joy on people's faces. And there were times last year where I'm like, in the past, they probably lose hope at this point. And they didn't. And it was just like, it's such a transformation. But I was just happy. Like, the first time I felt like this fan base could have hope was going to the first game with Josh Harris as the owner. Whether or not they were going to be good that year, I just felt like they had the right ownership group in place. And, because with Snyder, you never felt like they may have a good year. You may stumble into a good year, get lucky, whatever. But you could not sustain it because he wasn't very smart.
He was a black cloud, right?
He's a bad owner. So having all said all that, like, yes, last year was by far my favorite for a couple reasons. One, the rebirth of the fan base and getting that back, right? Two, a guy like Wad, it's what we've seen great, we've had like Robert and other guys like that have come in. There was something different with Jayden, and you've sensed it back in the spring. And so, like, you saw a guy like not just getting to a point, but a young man who could sustain that because of his approach and the way he works. So, like, it wasn't just now, even with Robert, you felt like, oh, this is the start of a 10-year run. Like, even at that time, the more you learned, the more you realized there were just other underlying issues all over the place. That doesn't exist here. Like, you have an offensive coordinator and a quarterback who work the same way. And like, it's just different. So that's another reason. But then, like, the dramatic finishes, like, my God, like, how can you top that? Like, it's coming down to the last minute. I don't think we'll ever see a season like this again. They may go on to win a Super Bowl. And I do think with this group that they eventually will. But we'll never have a season like this again because it was so many things went into it after all the garbage that everybody put up with. And then to see the joy come back and then to see those close, like Bram every
Bram
week,
was losing his mind every week.
And it was like, it's like, oh yeah, another one. But it was like, I just think there's so many, the expectations were not high. So everything they hit was like, this is awesome. Now the expectations are there, right? So everything starts to get a little bit different, but I just don't think you can have like all these elements combined to get what we had last year. So like all those reasons, I mean, 2012 was a lot of fun. Like watching Rob Brugge was a lot of fun, but they were 3-6 at one point. This team was good. Like the first game, okay, then from that point on, and I think it was especially like the Cincinnati, Arizona double dip there, they're going to be good. There's like, you don't do that if you're not good. And so you just knew there's something different. So like, it was all year. And then Louie, it's the first time in a long time, it was all about football.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. Like in the past, it was always like something would pop up, some issue would pop up, some investigation would pop up, or they just started to lose or whatever. And, it's funny because even with my podcast, I used to do like a preview for the game of the weekend, right? And you figure, okay, they'll be at least good enough. And then you realize like, you can't do that because who wants to hear a preview when they're 3-10 in December?
Right.
So that's where I started to do 5 things I think. So it's a bunch of different things. But last year was golden. Yeah. So I apologize for Emma, but that last year was golden.
No. And I mean, do you hear the excitement in your voice? You're an honorary member of this fan base, John. Whether you like it or not, we've accepted you as an honorary member of this fan base because you've been through the struggle just like us.
Oh, yeah.
And, and so you see the joy in our
PTSD all over the place.
Yeah. So we've changed the name. It's PDSD, Post Dan Snyder Syndrome, right? Or disorder, excuse me. So it's PDSD, right? So I just got a lot bit left. Yeah. I've just got a little bit left, and it stems from not being able to have back-to-back seasons of success, right? That's the last bit that I have is we haven't seen them do what they did last year and then come back and do it again the following season. We've only had one back-to-back winning season, and that season was 8-7-1 back in 2016, right? So that almost doesn't even count. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So we are looking for success, and you just mentioned that the bar has been raised, right? The floor has raised, and so has the ceiling. So I'm excited, as you can tell. All of the fans are excited. And before we start talking about 2025, we still, because like you said, 2024 was magical.
Yeah.
And I told the fan base, I said, we will never have another season. Even when we win the Super Bowl, we will never have another season like last year because it was so many firsts for a lot of people. It came out of nowhere and it was so dramatic, right?
Right.
I mean, it was everything. It was movie script worthy, John. The only thing that didn't happen was the Super Bowl, right? Had they won the Super Bowl, that's something you would write a script for.
This felt like Rocky 1.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes, it did. You know, so favorite game. So I just big picture, the favorite game you've covered out of your 500 games. Now we're at 510. We're going to get you to 1,000, John.
Oh, man.
Your favorite game you've ever covered.
I'd have to really think about that because, you know, a lot of times it's about moments.
Yep.
So the reason why some of those games stick out, I mean, shoot, the end of the Hail Mary. Now the game itself wasn't a great game. There was a struggle there, right? Right. But the Hail Mary, the moment, like when they, I'm trying to think of the Santana, like the Santana Moss,
the Jacksonville game. Okay. Oh, that one was a good one.
Yeah. But Santana Moss, like but the game.
That was another bad game, though. That was another bad game with a great finish.
I look at moments more than I look at games. Because like there hasn't been a lot. Listen, I think the Detroit game was a lot of fun, and obviously, talking a lot about wins because like there have been some games against the Eagles, win or lose, where it's really a fun game. Like they've had some really fun games against them over the years. I'd have to go back. And
the 2012 game against Dallas, the finale for the division.
Yeah, well, that was because the atmosphere. So like when you look at like when you're a reporter, like you want an atmosphere, and that atmosphere was tremendous. Like that really was because that was a true. Because there have been a lot of manufactured "we want Dallases" over the years, right? Like you want to try and get into it, but it's like that one was more pure because there was so much excitement with it, and the place was packed. And, you thought for the fan base too, it was the start of, again, a long run. So that would be one for sure. I'm trying to think of some early games. There were, I just remember games like the LeVar Arrington game against Carolina that turned that whole season around. Yep. So is that a great game? No, but again, it's more moments. Clinton Portis's first play against
Tampa Bay was crazy.
Because it's Gibbs' return. Like those are memorable moments. And I do think like this playoff run was very memorable because of the exercising the ghost and the doink to go, that gets you a game winner. Like
great call by Mike Tirico. I don't know if you got to hear it because you were there. I have. Oh my God, that was was so dramatic.
In the past that ball kicks out.
Yes, that was the football guy saying we owe you a few. Right. Don't worry about it.
Right. And then the way, so like, and then, you go up to Detroit and it's a phenomenal atmosphere. Yeah. Phenomenal because it's indoors, all that. It was so loud. And then they go and handle business. Like that's a memorable game just from that standpoint. And it was also like walking into, this is a selfish thing, but walking into the Eagles, into the Lincoln financial field, to cover that game, I'm like, oh my God, I've been doing this for 30 years. It's the first time I've covered a championship game. So like that, but the game itself, whatever. But I'd have to go back and look because there have been I will say there haven't been enough of those over the years. The Roberts run against the Vikings, to clinch that game,
like electrifying. Yeah.
And you look at that stadium and what it looked like at that time compared to what it's looked like over the last 5, 6, 7 years. It was just different. So I know I'm leaving something out, but there's got to be one that sticks out a little bit more. But I can't. Yeah. But those moments stick out. Sean Taylor returning that kick against Dallas, the field goal, the block.
On the face mask and the field goal to win it. Yeah, that was and so I get it. The moments are what stick out more. So because a lot of times when you think about those games, they weren't great games necessarily, but there were great moments within those games. The one game that I could think of, the Dallas game, was a really good game throughout. The 2012 finale was a good game throughout. And then the Jacksonville game, even though that didn't have like big implications, with Santana Moss in overtime with the catch, that was a good game, right?
Right, for sure.
So last year was ridiculous, as we've talked about. But what was the biggest surprise to you of the 2024 season for the Commanders, in your estimation? So many things stick out, I know.
Yeah. I can't say it was Jayden. I guess maybe a little bit of Jayden, but I really thought he'd be good.
Yeah.
But
maybe not that good. But
I think I think how quickly I feel like, despite some recent lists, how quickly I felt like he became a top 10 quarterback. And how and why he became that, right? Like, it was my God, that throw against Cincinnati, like, you talk about a moment. I mean, because of everything that went into it, like the block by McNichols, the poise that he showed in those moments, like that's, I think the surprise would be how, not that he was good, but how good he was and how fast he got there. Like, the only time I felt like he looked like a rookie was when I went back and in preparing for the Bucs game, the playoff game. I went back and rewatched the first game, and all year I'm thinking he's never looked like a rookie. Then you go back, now you have like a whole season to compare to. I'm like, okay, he looked like a little bit like a rookie here.
Yeah.
For him, right? Not like a typical rookie, but a rookie Jayden Daniels compared to what he did. So then you see the progression, but like how quickly he got there. Like, they talked to him about keeping the play alive, not just tucking and 6-7 yards behind the line. And he corrected that really fast. Like, it wasn't perfect, but it was better. And so those moments, I think, that's the surprise, was how good he was so soon. Like, I thought he could get to this point, but in year one, like that fast, where midway through the season, people are saying, he should be in the conversation for MVP. Like, that's because I can point to other things. I was a little bit surprised that Zacchaeus was really good. I really liked him, but is that a major surprise? No, because I think a lot of it stems from number 5. I wasn't surprised by the unity of that group, because you felt it and saw it in the spring and the summer, right? And then it played out during the season. But so I'm just going to stick with Jayden, because it just, that he's special. And again, the more you hear about him, it's genuine hard work that goes into it. It's not I work hard and then he goes off and does different things. It's this is just like, this is what I do. And this is what I care about. And even when you see him at like these events, whether it's the Fanatics thing or the, the rookie, the NFL honor stuff, he doesn't sit there and grab the spotlight. The spotlight gets him. Yeah. There's a difference. Like, some guys want that spotlight.
I'm about to say, he doesn't want it.
No, he does. No, he doesn't. It's genuine. It's like he's, shoot, they go to the Capitals game and, you see Sam Hartman chugging a beer.
Chugging beers, right.
You know why he chugs the beer? Because Jayden is prodding him to do it. Like, I don't know. There's such a difference with him. I think maybe the surprise is just how genuine it all is, because it is. And just watching him in the locker room, interacting with teammates, and the way they treat, like some of like Bobby Wagner especially treats him like, like a little brother, and all that entails. But he's okay with that. He doesn't sit there and think like, I'm above this. Like, he'll go, he goes back to friends and all that. Like, they still rag him the same way. You know what I mean? Like, that's different, So anyways, I'd say like the whole package maybe is what, like, okay, I thought it was going to be good, and it's even better than I thought.
Is he already the best quarterback in the NFC?
I would say you can make the case going in. I would also say, like, let's see it again. Let's see what he does for the encore, right? To say that, because hold on.
Yeah,
Sorry,
no
phone ring.
No
So
problem.
let's see what he does this year to say, like, we've seen Matthew Stafford do it multiple years in a row, right? But is there anybody you'd rather have in the NFC? If you had to start, if you're in the NFC, you put all the NFC coaches together, like, which quarterback do you want first? Well, who do you think they're going to take?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I'm sorry, like, you know, it's not Jalen Hurts. Like, I like Jalen Hurts, but it's not him.
Right.
It's not Dak. I mean, if you're starting a team right now, he's the one in the NFC. But to say is he the best? Like, again, I'd say like Stafford is still really good. And so if Jayden continues to do what he does, then yeah, I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't think that. Like, who else would you rather have in that conference?
That's my thing is when I ask people about quarterbacks and ranking them, I just kind of go off of, if you were starting a franchise, who would you take, right? Like the AFC is loaded, right? We know that. The NFC isn't. You know what I mean? It's kind of there for the taking, so to speak. I mean, from a quarterback standpoint, obviously we know the Eagles are the best team in the conference. So, so I've asked you what was the biggest surprise. What impressed you the most about the Commanders in 2024?
I think, you know, off the top of my head, probably their focus. And I think it starts with Dan Quinn. So just the approach, like, again, we've heard in the past, focus on what's important, not what's interesting. But I felt like what's interesting also got too much focus with it.
Right. And became more important than it should have been.
Correct. And that doesn't help anybody. I did not think that with this group. I felt like Dan Quinn, like, this is what's happening today. This is what you need to worry about today. This is what you need to worry about the next day, right? Like, there was a genuine day at a time approach, and it's a cliche, but I don't think I've seen anybody as focused on the day as this group. And that's why I think they could bounce back from certain situations. So I think like that was real, like, to the point where I've talked about this probably a little bit on the podcast, but like during the playoffs, so you have those night games, right? The first two games were night games. And as a reporter, you have to get back in case they lose for locker cleanout day. So typically it's the day after the season ends. Not always in those situations, they could push it another day, but you have to get back. So you don't, but usually the coach, you might hear like, okay, yeah, if they lose, cleanout day will be the next day, right? You usually know. We never knew because Quinn didn't even want to go there. So he didn't want to put that in his in his stratosphere. And like, I appreciate that. What it caused me to do is you have an 8:00 game followed by a 7 a.m. flight, which means 1 week, 1.5 hours sleep, the next week, no sleep. But I appreciate the mindset because he doesn't want to introduce that to the atmosphere, right? He doesn't want to, so but that focus, I think, and that mindset is what I think jumped out quite a bit, because I felt like it filtered down to the players. You heard the messaging was so much better, and you understand now what the importance of that is when you're around this, right? So yeah, I think the other thing too, I will say this too. I want to say this because I think how normal Bobby Wagner is. That jumped out to me quite a bit, because here's a guy that in the spring, he'd walk by and guys' eyes would get big, like, that's Bobby Wagner, right? Like the respect he commands because of who he is and what he's done, but he is a normal guy. Like you can go out, like I've covered guys, there's certain things, like they might feel like they're bigger than the situation, right? I never felt like that. Now, they all have egos, like everybody's, right? And but man, he was so approachable. And I think part of the reason that locker room was so good is because the relationship between Bobby and Jayden. Like you have an offensive leader, and a defensive leader who got along so well. It brings so many people together, but I think how Bobby was a normal dude, and it just I enjoyed talking to him. You could talk to him about basketball, about books, like the leadership books he reads, etc., all that stuff. Normal dude like that. I think that is something else that jumped out to me.
And sticking with that conversation, we haven't had a guy like Bobby Wagner here in forever, right? With that kind of pedigree and those credentials, and for him to come in here and kind of embrace that role as the leader, and he did it in a different way. He wasn't very, you know, over the top, right? He's not a very vocal guy unless he has to be, and he was during that tough stretch, right? He was the one that told the media, this is a great team, not a good team, a great team, and come back and talk to me in 4 or 5 weeks or whatever, and then you guys will be having different questions for me. And he was right. We didn't lose another regular season game after that, right? And to go back to DQ and the messaging, he's been spectacular with that. I think the thing that's been so impressive with him too is just the attention to detail, right?
Oh, for sure.
Even in the building, they put up all these different posters and sayings, right? And one of the ones, like I think you were alluding to, was like, the only fight that matters is the one that we're in, right? We don't want to worry about anything else. We just want to worry about what we're doing right now and how are we going to get better for the upcoming opponent. And they live by those mantras, the anybody, anywhere, anytime. They live by that, right? The winning time moments, they live by those mantras. You know, a lot of times it's lip service. You know, when you used to hear Rivera say, be where your feet are and all that stuff, that wasn't the case, right? But it's definitely the case. Yeah, with DQ and it's a 180 transformation is definitely taking place. So
for sure. And I will say I'm sorry to cut you off. Along those lines, where I also think that they're sincere in, because like Quinn will say, like, okay, this is what I want. They talk to the players like, this is what I want you to improve in. Then they'll say, this is what I'm going to improve in, or this is what I'm going to work on. And you see changes made, whether it's him from over the years or whether it's like Joe Witt with his approach. Like he altered his approach during the season. He altered his approach during the spring, because like he is very big on, you have to analyze yourself and also implement things, even if it's tough, even if you don't want to admit that maybe you could, you know, like you can always do something better. And I think that always helps. Now, I say all this and I still say, like, without number 5, maybe some of this stuff doesn't work.
Of course, John.
But I will say, like, but even if they had like an average quarterback, I still think they would have had a good year, because there were a lot of other elements. There were a lot of other elements that came into play that I think helps make a good team. But yes, I think they, you know, it's the sayings and all that can get you know, I think you have to be careful as a coach not to over rely on them. Change them up once in a while to stay fresh, but you got to live it, because if you don't live it, and even Terry would talk about that, if you're not living it, it doesn't matter. And I think they lived it.
Yeah. And players, I think media, fans definitely alike, I think, appreciate accountability. You love the accountability, even from Joe Witt. It wasn't a great season defensively from his group, right? And they probably just lacked the talent, to be honest with you. But when it's all said and done, do you know how enjoyable, how refreshing it was to just hear him say, hey, look, we got to stop the run better. We got to produce turnovers. And the thing that I've been screaming all season, we even started making jokes about it, was the fourth quarter defense, right?
Oh, yeah,
we couldn't get a stop to save our lives in a critical situation. It always had to be 5 that bailed us out of a jam because the defense couldn't get a stop. And to hear him say and acknowledge, we got to be better in the fourth quarter when it matters the most. I mean, I hate to just pile on the last group and the group before that and the group before that, but you didn't get that kind of acknowledgement. Like, hey, we got to be better. Right? We got to put the players in better positions. We got to find a way to coach them to get more turnovers. It just feels good to hear them acknowledge things that we're saying out loud in our spaces, but they acknowledge it and understand that these things are going on, and they're not burying their head in the sand.
For sure. And I like I said, I think it's sincere, because I've been around enough coaches who say a lot of this stuff, and they don't always, they may find other things that have to get done. So they don't really like, we go self-scout, we do this. but they don't really give you examples of what maybe they've done. I think Joe Witt was good at doing that. The other thing I appreciate with him is even early last year, people tried to give him an out with some things like, well, you know, it's a new defense. You have all these new players. He's like, I don't want to hear it. Like, this is what the expectation. I don't want to hear it. And again, like, it's one thing to say it, but I do think they live it. And that's the difference, because everybody says stuff like that. Like, but behind closed doors, they might make excuses, because I've heard a lot of those excuses over the years, you know, and then publicly they might say something else, but then privately they might say, this guy stinks, or this guy can't do this. So, well, your job is to find guys who can, or then put them in positions where they can do it. And so, and if you can't get that guy to do it, you got the wrong guy, get him out. Right. Yeah. So, but I do think they live it more than most groups. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely, John. Amen to that. So transitioning to 2025, you've had a chance to digest the offseason. You've been out to the park. You've seen some of the OTAs and the offseason work. Give me a name of a fresh face outside of the two tackles and Deebo Samuel that you think is going to have a serious impact on his team in 2025.
A serious impact outside of, so not, does that include Trey Amos?
You can include Trey Amos.
All right, well, I'm going to include him because I really, really like him. And it took, it's funny because, again, I've seen a lot of young corners, right? And so when you watch him in practice, just the way he moves, there's a fluidity to his game. He's not grabby like some other, like St. Just, Bashad Breeland, like, those guys were very grabby.
Yes.
And they grab up high. I'm like, dude, grab them down around the hip if you're going to grab them. Because they don't watch it for that as much. It's just, you know, and veteran corners will tell them that. And it's like, why are you grabbing them up here?
Right. Where it's easily in their sight.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, but when you watch Amos, I wasn't seeing that. Now I haven't seen, like, I want to watch when we get to training camp, when, you know, against Terry McLaurin.
Yep.
Hopefully that, you know, whatever. But like, I want to see him against guys like that, right? And I've seen him against Deebo, right? But Terry's the kind of guy that you're going to go up against more often than not. So I want to see that challenge and what it looks like for him. But the fluidity of his movement, I really think is good. And I like him on film. Like, he was a guy that I really liked watching, of the corners that I thought would be available to him. I put in our mock, I had the corner from Kentucky there to them, but Hairston, and I know they liked him too. So it was one, but the guy I really liked was Amos. I just thought, you know, because I thought like I thought he played a competitive, I think they both were very competitive. I just felt like he was a really good cover guy, multi-skilled cover guy, but also I feel like he comes up and is a willing tackler and is aggressive with it. Now, whether or not he's a great tackler, he's a very willing tackler. So I like him. And I think he's the guy that I think, you know, he would be the guy that I would say, okay, that's the one I think that could really kind of jump out. And then, you know, it's so hard. Like, I know, Bill Krosky Merritt is a guy that people are excited about. And I like aspects of his game, but it's impossible to really get a feel for a running back until they get the pads on, because you're not being hit. So there's no, you know, you want to see what's it like when you're about to get hit and how do they react. But I think he runs angry, and I like that. And I think there's going to be some good elements of him, but really it's Amos is the guy that jumps out to me.
Word of advice, John, either call him Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt or just Bill. I don't think Bill Krosky Merritt is going to, it doesn't flow. It's not clean, clunky.
I agree.
It's either Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt or it's just Bill. You can't do
and here's
both.
the thing, to me, Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt has a great rhythm to it.
It's rhythm to it. Yeah,
I'm with you. So you're right. Like, it's just like, it's like Pele. Just call him Bill. You're right.
Yeah,
I think
that's Bill.
Even if it was William Krosky Merritt, where you get the multiple syllables, that would make me feel better. But it's like you have this great rhythm to the name. It's Bill, but you know, that's what he wants to be called. So, but I have to write Ja'Cory because for search engines and all that, or whatever,
it won't pop up.
It will not pop up. So it's good. So anyways, but Bill.
So you recently wrote a great article. And again, if you guys are not tapped into John with his articles on ESPN, on his podcast, the John Keim Report over on Empire Media on YouTube, which again, congratulations on 1,000, but also congratulations for the transition. I knew it wasn't the easiest to transition from just straight audio to the visual aspect, but you've done it seamlessly, and you do a tremendous job with that. You wrote an article recently with 5 guys that are chasing the bag for 2026. All right, and the 5 guys were Deebo Samuel, it was B-Rob, there was Daron Payne, and then the 2 guys that got traded for in Laremy Tunsil and also Marshawn Lattimore.
Right.
If we're going to say all things are created equal, all of them have really good seasons, okay, across the board. I want you to rank those guys in the order in which you think they would be given an extension to come back here.
Oh, Tunsil, left tackle.
And I'll say this too. With Tunsil, I wouldn't be shocked if he gets the Cosme treatment and they give him an extension in September, that first week. If you look at what they did in San Francisco, a lot of their deals get done in late August and early September. And that Cosme deal is an example of that extension. I wouldn't be shocked if Laremy Tunsil, if he looks great through camp and they feel good about him, I wouldn't be shocked if they extend him in September.
Me either. And I think because of the importance and I think they have a chance to build a really, really good line for several years. Yep. So why, and I also know I know they feel like Connolly can go play left tackle if he has to. Like that's, if they didn't have Tunsil, Connolly would be working at left tackle. That's how high they feel about him.
Yep.
But if you have a chance to have those kind of tackles, like you could have the quote unquote Lane Johnson type over at right tackle with Connolly. Like look at the line you can build. And I think the importance with Jayden Daniels and everything else, like to me, that would be, number one. And I don't, I think with Lattimore, it's more and Payne, it's more about you do have that extra year on the deal. So it's more about not getting cut and maybe you get some guaranteed money out of that. And so I think that's where it is. Deebo would be the interesting one because it becomes more costly, right? And at that position, but what level of impact did he have? Like, is he the old Deebo, or is he a guy that had a really good year, but maybe showed signs of can he sustain that for the next couple of years? Right. So I think that one would be a little bit more interesting. But so I don't like with Robinson. I don't know that they're going to pay a running back like that. That's not based on reporting. It's just based on position value. And then it depends on how Bill does as well. Right.
Good job, John. Quick study, John. I love it.
So, but I think, I'd probably go, it would be Tunsil, and then again, like what impact are we talking? Like with Payne, is he getting 11.5 sacks again? Which I don't think he has to do. If he can get to 7, that's a really good number for him, which he hasn't hit very often. But
I mean, like you said in your article, the last 2 years combined, he's at 8. So if he gets 7, I mean, that's a big year for him.
It is a very big year for him. So, but I think the importance of the position to me and having a chance to have a really good wall in front of Jayden is paramount. And, and then, I really like if the hard part with Lattimore is just the health. Yeah. Can you trust him to stay healthy a couple years in a row? But again, like they really made that trade. They certainly made it with last year in mind for sure, but also the future because he was under control. And then it's like, he doesn't have the guaranteed money. So you could give him kind of like what they did with Deebo.
Deebo, I was just going to say, I think they're going to do, if he plays well this year, there's no extension for him, I don't think.
Right. No.
The only thing there is them giving him some guaranteed money, stretching it out over the, and bringing down the base. But they're going to give him some guarantees like, hey, we're going to take care of you. Sort of like what they did with Deebo.
Right. Exactly. So and with Payne, again, if it's really good,
it's got to be really good though. It's a lot of money they can save. I feel like I think they sent a message to him, a clear message to him with what they just did with Jonathan Allen. It's the same situation.
Yeah. Very much. Absolutely.
And I like the point you made about him potentially stepping out of the shadow, because you got to think about it. This goes all the way back to Alabama. Yeah, he was in Jonathan Allen's shadow.
For sure.
And so he only had 1 year away from him at Bama, and then came into the league, and bam, he was right back with him. And anytime we talked Daron Payne, it was usually the Bama wall, right? It was always attached to Jonathan Allen.
Correct.
Allen was the big persona. He was the guy that the media always went to for a quote. And so maybe he's stepping out of the shadow and into the spotlight, right? Maybe he's getting comfortable being, you know, his own guy, so to speak. I mean,
absolutely.
That's an interesting take.
And I do think that they feel like he's a little bit more outgoing this year for whatever reason. And, you know, it's not a knock on John. John casts a big shadow because he's just a strong personality and all that in the room as well. And so, you know, but I do think it's, you know, without him there, then they're asking Daron to be more of a leader. And can he become that? And I think maybe he's at the point where he likes that role. He is not a big vocal guy. Have you ever seen an interview with Daron?
Yeah, we know.
They're not very long, but that's okay. But in the room, it doesn't matter what he does with us. It matters in that room. Right. And I think in that room, he's really, I think he's good for that room. And I think there's a good room, like I'm really like the addition of Dietrich Wise for that reason. But I think they have some good pros in there, Dorrance Armstrong, Farrell, like all those guys. But I think Daron really carries some weight in there because he has had a good career. But yeah, I think the numbers have, like, he has to be impactful. It's got to be impactful. And like, I'll go back to what you said earlier about the fourth quarter. You're right. Like, I knew it was bad in the fourth quarter. I didn't realize just how bad it was until it's like a couple podcasts ago where I'm like, okay, how bad was it? Well, it was horrible. It was horrible, man. Way worse than I thought.
Yeah.
And so if you can make impact plays in that quarter, now you have a reason to be paid the way you know the contract suggests. Otherwise, maybe they do something and extend them a little bit, but maybe lower the cap hit, you know, something like that, because I think you'd want to keep him around. Yeah. But because I think with John, I think this would be a different situation, but you'd have to lower that cap hit probably.
Yeah. We've had conversations on my show where there's no way he's coming back on that number next year, whether he's good or not.
Right.
He's getting extended and they're going to bring that number down, or he's gone. Right.
Right.
There's no way he's playing on that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a big number.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, you just made a great point that I think a lot of people overlook, because in past years, especially with Rivera, they tried to bring good guys in here, but it didn't always equate to good football. Last year, we saw good guys bond and come together, create a brotherhood, and that mattered, because that wasn't a super talented team. Obviously, 5 was the biggest difference, but those guys played for one another. I've never seen that kind of bond before with the team as a fan before in my life. And you could tell that the confidence they had came from the confidence they had in one another and the trust that they had in one another.
For sure. So I'll go back to 2000 and 2000, you know, Norv Turner's last year. So anybody who remembers, if you don't remember,
Skins,
you know, it was. So anyway, before the year, they signed all these big names: Bruce Smith, Deion Sanders, Mark Carrier, Jeff George. They bring all these guys in, and like during training camp, it was like camp love. Like every time there's like a big play, like they're all patting each other on the back. You know, it was just, you know, the offense. There was a lot of like signs of what looked like good chemistry.
All right.
Then they're 6-2, and they had a couple rough stretch, and they caved.
Yep.
And I remember talking to Larry Centers, who's in that team. I said, well, I remember talking to him after the season. They said, it looked like you guys had good chemistry and blah, blah. He goes, you don't know what you have until you get punched in the mouth.
Right.
So last year, this team, 3-game losing streak, 3 tough losses. You know, certainly 2 of them, one of them, the Pittsburgh game, they should have won. Like, you know, the Dallas game,
should have won that game too, but
right. Yeah. You know, Philly was good, right?
Yeah.
That's okay. So you should have won at least one of those games, but you didn't. 3-game losing streak. And then they come out and they play well, and then they go on a streak. Like, that's the response. That's when you know you have that kind of group. And I think that's why I was a little bit surprised that Zacchaeus got left from that they allowed him to go.
Yeah.
Because because he was a guy, he was one of the players that to me symbolized all of that, right? Where he doesn't play in the Bengals game all that much. And Dan Quinn would talk about this, but you would see him on the sidelines being one of the first guys off the field, congratulating guys as they're coming off, right? Like that speaks volumes to me. And then you'd watch him. He had the one play where Eckler fumbles after like a 50-yard run. And when you watch
against Cleveland, I was going
to bring it up. You watch the Kias, he's on the left side and he hauls his butt down there, not because he knows he's going to fumble, but because he's trying to get in the play to maybe help. And that effort got the ball back, right? Yeah. So like that's what that means to me. But the other thing you have to trust is they found Zacchaeus for that reason. Like they knew that about him. So they're bringing in guys like Will Harris has that. Jonathan Jones has that. Dietrich Wise has that. So they still, whether or not you have the same group, you're still looking for the same type of guy. Yeah. And so I think they'll still have that. But last year was unique, man. That was, I haven't, I've been around some teams where I felt like, in the Gibbs era, where I felt like they had that, they had really good chemistry, but I hadn't experienced anything like this, where it was like a true definition of, I want to do this for the guy next to me. I want to do this. I don't want to let this guy down. I don't want to let that guy down. I don't want to let the coaches down. It reminded me of the Gibbs 1 era, which I never covered, but I heard a lot about talking to guys over the years.
Yeah. I mean, like Cosme is to me a microcosm of it. He gets hurt and all he could talk about was feeling like he was letting his brothers down. And, he talked about it being bigger than himself and all of that stuff. And that resonates, right? I mean, that's when it's getting through to the guys, when you hear guys talk like that, because he's been here, right? He was here for the last regime and it never sounded like that, right?
No, it was never like that.
Never like that at all.
No, and it hasn't been like that. Like I never really covered that. Like, again, there were years where that was really good. Or they were closer. Cause I remember even the one Gibbs year where they started slow and I'm like, golly, they feels like the chemistry was better than what the record has shown and that they worked too hard and all that. And then they went on a run. And the funny thing, Louie, is last year in the spring, I remember thinking like, and in the summertime, I'm like, man, it's too bad this team isn't going to be that good this year because their chemistry is off the charts. And I remember I told one of the coaches after the Detroit game, I'm like, I kept saying this, like, I guess I was a little bit wrong, but it showed you how, first, again, how good number 5 is, but how important all that is. And when you go into those fourth quarter games and you have that, it can manifest itself in different ways. So, but I think that was a massive strength. And I don't know that it'll be quite as good this year because it's hard to recapture that, but I still think it'll be good because again, the guys they look for share those qualities. And like, I know, like, Lattimore is pretty much a do your own thing kind of guy. But then when you watch him practice, he will work with guys, he will do things. He's just a little bit more of a loner, right? He doesn't like, he's quieter, but he will, like, again, when he first got here, we're watching him on the other field. He and St. Just are going over some things. And I watch him working with Amos a little bit where, or like dapping him up after plays, like he's cognizant of all that. I don't think because he's struggled in all this that he's somehow, or he's not showing up for this stuff that it makes him not a fit for the locker room. Right. I think there are some things and I also think like they have such a strong group with all that you can absorb some who don't do this or that. Right. What you don't want to do is get too many guys doing their own thing because then it's hard to absorb, but they have the locker room that can do that right now.
Absolutely. And just one more thing on OZ. I'm just as shocked as you are that he wasn't brought back because it felt like he represented the fiber of what DQ used to describe, right? Guys being ready when their number was called, it being bigger than themselves, rooting on teammates, that sort of thing. And I also like the fact that they didn't get comfortable with him just because of those qualities. They look to upgrade that position, right? I think Jalen Lane being brought in is their version of a better Olamide Zacchaeus in their mind, Right.
Well, because the returnability, he's a better
Yep.
return. He'll be a better returner.
Absolutely.
And, I think as a receiver, let's wait and see.
We got to see. We got to see.
But I will say, like, if he can come in and impact the game as a returner, that, like, as a punt returner, that's really helpful. So, like, I don't want to minimize what he can do in that regard. And then the speed, what I feel pretty good about is one thing we saw last year with Kingsbury is, and with the whole, both sides of the ball, but especially with Kingsbury, knowing how to use guys, finding a couple packages for a guy. If you can't find some packages with a guy with speed, I don't know, what are you doing? Right.
Yeah.
So I feel pretty good that they'll find something for him that he can help them with. Yeah. And I think another key is Noah Brown. And, I again, I've talked about this, but I do not believe that injury was serious.
Yeah. You put the battery in our back, John, because once you said that, we ran with it, right?
Yeah.
And he was at a autograph signing, and the guy posted a picture of him, and he looked fine.
Yeah. No. So but I felt like what he gave them was really good. So when you lose Zacchaeus and you let Diami walk, but you're bringing in Debo, Jalen Lane, and you're getting Noah back for a full offseason and full year. Remember, like, he joined the team right before the
season started, right?
And he made plays for them. And he, and Quinn will talk about this too, but he drew more penalties probably than I have to check this.
That's fact.
Yeah,
he drew the most pass interference penalties down the field.
Yeah, so he's a big help, and so I'm with you. Like, I really liked Olamide, and I just liked watching him play because he just did so many little things that I think add up. And the same thing with, like, Jeremy McNichols. Like, I like watching guys like that who have, like, those are the kind of guys. Like, I used to coach youth basketball, right? And then, I always measured my ability as a coach not by how much we won or whatever. I can draft well. Like, I draft well. I'm like, I have nothing to do with that kid, because he is the best player in the league. But if I can get the 9th player on my team to play a certain way, I know I've made an impact, right? Yeah. Because if you can get that guy to do something, now you have a chance to be a really good team. And that's how I felt like with this group, the Sheldon Days of the world, right? Guys who would be end of the roster type guys were helping them. And that's when
We didn't have that, John. We didn't have that. Coaching wasn't here. Guys weren't being plucked from our staff to go elsewhere. It just didn't happen, John. It hasn't happened since the Shanahan.
No, and here's the thing, like, even with the previous staff, there weren't a lot of guys that were going to go somewhere else. Like, this staff, there are guys that teams will want. Yes. And I think they got lucky or fortunate that, because the whole succession plan with Kingsbury relies on other guys not leaving first.
Right.
So if you had lost Pritchard or David Blau or Brian Johnson, that messes up that plan, because we all know if, like, Kingsbury, if they have another good year, could he go this year? Would he want to wait another year? I don't think anything's a guarantee that when he'll leave, because he is very happy here and he loves working with Jayden. And it could be a little bit like a Ben Johnson situation where it's like, I just want to see this through to the point where I, like, now you got to go. Right. Yeah. But it would have messed up that plan. But the point is, they have guys that others will want. Yeah. And it's a good staff. Like, and a lot of ex-players, which I think gives energy, but I think the depth in the coaching staff is just stronger. And we're right, like the Shanahan years especially with the offensive guys, like, that was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was.
This is a good staff.
I think what saved us too was the deep playoff run. We might have lost a couple guys if not for that. They had to block Blau from being able to interview, or it might have been Tavita for the Jacksonville job for lateral move, so they were able to block it. So they're going to come soon. The other teams are coming, right? Correct. And so it's just a testament to the group they put together. 2 more, and I'm going to get you out of here, John. Right. I've asked every single person that has anything to do with the team this question, because I think it's one of the toughest questions to answer. Give me your definition of success in 2025 for the Washington Commanders.
So I think, let's assume it's good health, right? I think at least 10 wins in a playoff berth. Okay. It would be the first time double-digit wins 2 years in a row, and then playoff berth for the first time in consecutive years since 91, 92.
92. Yeah.
So like that to me is because then like we all know it's a tougher schedule. It's a tougher schedule for everybody in the NFC East. And of the tougher and the NFC East, they have the quote unquote easiest schedule, right?
Yeah.
Right. And I have to put air quotes because it's not an easy schedule. It's the easiest of the hardest.
Right.
And so, but if you can get like it is a difficult one, and to you're not like I think after a while last year, you're not sneaking up on anybody. You're not sneaking up on Tampa in the playoffs or Detroit in the playoffs, right?
Right.
But there is going to be a little bit different emphasis against them this year. But if you can get that, then it establishes yourself as like you're here.
Yep.
And I think like and then one more good off season, and now I think you really take off. Yeah. And it's funny because nothing would surprise me with this team as far as success goes. Mm-hmm. Like if they have a really bad year, that would shock me. Yeah. And that would only occur because of a massive amount of injuries to me. Yeah. But double-digit wins get to the playoffs like that. And then, cause in playoffs, then it's like, there's two things with that. One, you don't know what you just need to get there. Right.
Right.
But nobody wants to face this team with number 5 at quarterback in the playoffs. They just don't. So I think that would be to me a minimum of what, if you go 9-8 and you don't make it, like you want to follow up last year with a strong showing. And I think they will. But I think 10 wins playoffs, I think that would be the start of the definition of success, because you would have done something that they haven't done here in a long, long time. And again, like I will always say, I don't know year to year what they're going to do, but I do know over a 10-year period, I think they're going to be good way more often than not, because it's just the approach they take and the guys they have in charge and the organization that it's become and the quarterback they have, it adds up to that.
And they proved last year, just get into the tournament. They can go on the road and win.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So like you said,
you don't want to play this.
Yes. You just, that's to me, the goal is just make sure you make it to the postseason.
Correct.
We'll figure everything else out when we get there. Would you want to win the NFC East? Of course, but just get to the postseason and we'll see what happens once we get there.
No defense wants to face number 5 in the postseason.
Absolutely. No one wants to play him. I'm still of the mindset, and I can't confirm this, and I think they did what was best for them, but I think the Rams were trying to avoid us in the first round last year. I really, truly do. Because they could have went up in the seeding if they had won to the 4 seed.
Right.
And they said, nah, we're good. We're good here at the 6. Or excuse me, they could have went up. They could have they were the
right. They rested their starters.
And something happened and it changed the numbers, because they could have been higher, I think. But they were like, yeah, we're good here. Right. Matter of fact, they would have been the 3 seed had they won.
Right.
And they fell to the 4 seed and they ended up playing Minnesota, which a team that they knew they could handle. And they wanted no parts of the Commanders. I fully believe that, but I can't confirm that. Anyway, John, last year I asked you this question and you were so excited that I couldn't even hear you. I didn't even hear your response. You were so excited. I said, who will you be watching and focusing in on at camp? And you was like, quarterbacks. And you're like, you got a new quarterback. I love watching quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you the same question this year. What will be your primary focus when you head out to Ashburn in July as this team hits the field for training camp? What will you be focusing on the most?
It's quarterback's always going to be a big, because you want to see like what level of improvement do you see, right? Mm-hmm. But I think but you always watch them. So let's put quarterback aside. Mm-hmm. I think it's the cornerbacks.
Okay.
Because because I also think you can learn more about them in training camp. Like I want to see the D line, but you're going to have to wait until the games really start to get, and the offensive line, like the Connolly, Tunsil pair, the bookends, like how does that work and how does that look? Like I'm actually, I would put that number 2 because I love what they're building on that offensive line and why they're like.
It's so important with the division we play in, John.
For sure. Yeah. And it's also like with the quarterback you have and the division you play in, that you have to have that. So that would be a big one as well. Like, but again, you're not going to learn, like we can start to learn about them in camp. And, I remember when Brandon Sheriff was here as a rookie, as a tackle, and they tried him at tackle. And like, you always say, like, you can't really learn until guys put the pads on. And he was kind of struggling. And then Houston came to town. And next thing you know, he's at guard.
It was quick.
So you learn, like, but even back then it was the hitting and all that in camps were different. But you can learn stuff about them that way. But you can learn about the cornerbacks and the receivers every day a lot, because they're locked in one-on-ones way more than any other group. So, and I think the importance of that group and like the ability to disguise, I think the impact they can have on that fourth quarter defense is pretty big, because we all know when push came to shove and it's a key down, that they're like with St. Juiced, one thing you want is the strong competitor's mindset and the confidence. Yeah. And I know like both staffs, I think, felt like he didn't have that level of confidence to play in those situations, right? To succeed in those situations. And I think you have more guys with that mindset now. So I'm anxious to see, like, how does Lattimore look, right? Like during the spring, you saw a little bit, but you couldn't see a lot because it's just not enough. And you want to see him against Terry, see him against their best, and see how you handle that. And same with Amos. But and I think Sam was still inside. Looked really good. So I don't worry about him. But you know what I mean? So I think like that to me, because again, quarterback always the one, but those two groups especially. And I think with the D line, we're not going to really learn until we get to see some game action. But
Good. I was going to ask you about Samuel still, because early in the season, remember, he started at nickel and it wasn't great. But obviously he was also early in his career. I think he's learned so much going outside and then now going back inside. I think he's going to be phenomenal. And he's sort of a chess piece guy. You can blitz, you can move around and do some things with. I think he's going to be phenomenal.
Well, and there were times last year, early in the year, where, and you'd see this this is, young corners. This is the coverage. Do not fall for this look. This is what we want you to do. And you fall for that look because your instincts took over, and then you learn. So like there's always a learning curve for those guys. And like in the spring, he looked really good. What that means, we'll see in the summer. And then what that means, we'll see in the season. But I like what he offers. He's tough, he's smart, and he plays hard. Like as an outside guy, like there's limitations there.
Yep, absolutely.
Competes his ass off. And that's great. Like you want first and foremost a competitor. He is, but I think he's still. And I always would tell people like this isn't Darryl Green part 2. They're different. So he's better inside, and that's okay. Now you got true outside guys that will help all over. But there were definitely some times where it's like that's a rookie learning curve there. And you saw the progression throughout the year. Like he had a really good game against the Lions, man.
Yes. Oh my God. Talk about it. I mean, he was so huge in that game. And I always say this to the fan base, like, where would we have been if he couldn't go outside and play last year? Where would we have been? And him and Noah Igbenogany, to give him some credit. If he couldn't go inside and play and Mikey couldn't go outside, we would have been screwed, because all of those guys weren't any good.
That's why they traded for Lattimore, because they didn't have that outside guy, and they knew they had a chance to get to the playoffs, and you couldn't get there without that. Now they obviously, Lattimore didn't have a huge contribution to that run, but he played in the last couple of games.
And you know what? Too, his name, I think, got him some respect. They didn't even throw at him in the Detroit game, really, nor the
Saints game.
Right. Like you knew they weren't going to throw at him because they know him, and they're like, we're not even going to try him. Right. That was just a respect thing. But Detroit stayed away from him too, and that's how Mikey was able to have the game that he ended up having. So
absolutely, and so obviously he was brought here to face the AJ Browns and
Mike
the Evans of the world.
Yep.
And it's funny because even in the first game against AJ Brown, he had some really good
he was competitive. Plays. Yes. It was competitive. It went back and forth.
He lost some big plays, but he had some really good plays too. And, so like, can you, and the thing that we don't know, and he even said how he never felt like himself. And what never having played against an NFL receiver coming off a hamstring injury, I don't know what it's like, but you have to take that into account and give him a chance to say, okay, not to make excuses for it, but to say, okay, we'll give you that. Let's see what it looks like now that you're healthy. Can you stay healthy? Like, that's the key for him. But I think it's, those are the guys he's brought here to cover. But the good thing for them is you now have another true outside corner. So if something happens to him, you're not playing with Jones and Samersow on the outside. You have Amos and one of the both Jones and Samersow can play outside. They can survive there because they're competitive. So you're not, you're okay. But you need Lattimore to play more than he has and to play at a solid, it doesn't have to be a Pro Bowler necessarily. He has to be solid. And you have to have some of those games against Eagles where, okay, today you got the best of A.J. Brown, right? You need to have some of those games.
That's right. And if we can get that, this defense is going to be exponentially better this season. John, I can't thank you enough for the time. You were so gracious with it again today. And I know I don't have to do this because, again, if you are subscribed to my channel, then you're definitely already subscribed to John's Empire Media channel and you're listening to his podcast. But still, I'm going to give you the platform and the opportunity to tell everyone where they can find any and all of your work.
Well, first of all, I appreciate it. And I think people know I don't do a lot of extra ones. I like doing yours because of just who you are. So I think you do a really good job. And that's why I wanted to come on with you. So I wanted to say that. So, and I know people watch you for a reason. And, I've heard, certainly I've heard a lot about you from people who have followed me. So I respect what you do and I enjoy coming on with you. So, but, for me, it's, John Keim reports over at Empire Media and then obviously ESPN.com. So those are the places, and the podcast is available wherever you get your podcast. So, but yeah, I just wanted to point that out because I enjoy your show and I enjoy coming on with you. So thank you.
I really appreciate you, John. And we could have done just a whole podcast just on you and Sam 48. I want to hear more about the pants situation. Obviously, the whole luck conversation. We had like 2 different shows where people were asking me about just that podcast episode and the whole luck conversation. It was a great conversation. The conversation you just had with CP was awesome. So continue churning out this content. You're keeping us entertained during this down period, John. We can't thank you enough for all that you do covering this team and doing a hell of a job at it, man. We really appreciate you. Thanks again for joining me on the summer series. You have a great summer. Stay cool. It's hot outside, John. I talked to another one of your beat reporters, colleagues on this series, 2 of them actually. And I told them, stay cool, man. This is going to be a hot summer. They keep the practices in the morning, get you guys out of there by like noon because it's going to be brutal this summer.
It's brutal. It's been the bike rides I go on. I'm coming back covered in sweat. So it's been something.
Take care, John. Have a good one. And I can't thank you enough, man.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Have a good one.
You too.